participants. For those on audio only, feel free as well not to share your video and simply to chime in whenever you want to ask a question throughout the day. I think this is going to get more and more conversational as the day goes on, and we see a lot of different thoughts on the main question of responsible artificial intelligence. We're looking particularly at ensuring reliable and safe and trustworthy systems with a tinge of human autonomy thrown in with emerging systems and technologies. The idea for this workshop was born about 4 weeks ago. I often hold very last minute events and make them extremely topical. I met the wonderful Professor Ben Schneiderman at a CCC workshop in Phoenix, Arizona, and after I presented on the topic of uberveillance, he came and asked me for my slides, and I said, sure, I'll share you my slides. He was looking at accountability and auditability of algorithms and data, and we converged on the potentiality of what I would call a pseudo blockchain, of where transactions of any type, human to human or human to human or machine to machine, would be auditable, liable, and accountable, if a machine can actually be held accountable for anything. From that, I booked tickets. Our keynote, Professor Ben Schneiderman, also booked tickets back here to Washington, DC. And of course, we all know the coronavirus has thrown a spanner in the works. But as Pat Scannell will say later today, it's probably been a spanner that we've had to face sooner than later. So we are looking forward to positive outcomes from this ugly, transmittable respiratory disease that has already killed quite a few people, particularly the elderly, who have attracted the virus. So again, log-on details for the Zoom are on katinamichael.com/SINS20, and if you scroll down about a third of the page, you'll find those Zoom details. Please do log on for those who are in the room. Today's program has a mixture of in-person and remote presentations. I'm enjoying this format because I think it's going to encourage more discussion than the typical hybrid or typical face-to-face setup. Some of our discussions will be followed, will follow keynotes, or will follow some of the guest talks, and then we're going to switch to a different format after lunch. It will be almost holistically offline and remote, but with more discussion and more questions as we cross to Australia, in many parts of the world actually, not just Australia. So some of you might be wondering, where was this series born from? How did we get to this point? What is a conference or workshop on the social implications of national security all about? And it was born about by the Research Network for a Secure Australia back in 2004. And I attended a very specialist conference on blasts, on counterterrorism and other topics, and they were willing to fund up-and-coming researchers who had good ideas. And I put forward, well, as part of the Human Factors series, why don't we emphasize something on social implications? And what started as something small grew over the last sort of 15 years, but also gained the attention of the Australian government, particularly Prime Minister and Cabinet. And on the screen at the moment, you can see the 13 or so workshops we've held annually on security, on data valence to uberveillance, on evidence-based policy in public administration, on covert policing, on location-based technologies, on surveillance and point-of-view technologies in law enforcement, like wearables, on UAVs, the pros and cons in policing, security and everyday life, on drones for good, on the socio-ethical implications of implantable technologies in the military sector. Particularly, we focused on brain implants in 2016 in Melbourne. We looked at biometrics and regulation, how data is alive in its utter essence, on social media and AI last year, and this year we matriculate through to responsible AI, which I would say is a convergence of all the various technologies we've looked at in the past. AI is not a singular thing. It's not a single technology. It's the bringing about of layers of tech and convergence like we've not seen before, almost to produce something that is highly powerful, more than previous. This was our first workshop presenters in 2006, people from the Defence Science Technology Office, all the way from legal spaces, security spaces, and government. The proceedings, which were written proceedings, it was one of the Australian government's main milestones in this space. A book of about 250 pages shows that people were preoccupied with security, the legal framework around security, individuals and the tracking of people using technologies and identification systems, and some of the emerging technologies on the body, and also those that were transferable like RFID. We then went through to 2007, again a different host of presenters from various areas, even geospatial technologies. So it was a mix of very technical people and also humanities scholars. As you can see here, people who were at the professorial level or had been in industry for 20 to 30 years, if not more, and then some very young voices. On the right there, or on my left, you can see a young Roba Abbas going through her research, and she's stuck with me for about 15 years or so, and we're at this point now where she's a co-convener with her work on co-design. So you can see in the past we've had a lot of people present and presenting. The topics, again recurring, have been security, law, information technology, mobile. We focused in on Australia and terrorism, for instance, and time was an element, and so was the world. Again, various presenters from the Australian Federal Police all the way through to people in transportation, people that investigated fraud, people in the technical area of business process coming together on this topic. And the intersecting terms over time have been these. I've defined them into three columns. The concept map on my left shows 3 years of full proceedings, some 700 pages from the presenters and delegates and participants. And you can see that we are preoccupied with people, with how we identify people, how we number them, what it means to be part of the public, what is the public interest, what is privacy, what is location tracking, how do we control this information, but also control the flow of people, both nationally and internationally. What is society? What is community? The concept of time, culture, and Australia. In the second column, you can see more specific sort of focuses around power, policing, law enforcement, human rights, legislation, the law, data and information, who has the right to access the information. And on the final column, you can see more a tech-specific sort of domain where we talk about security, risk management, interception, surveillance, intelligence, monitoring, then the technologies themselves, the mobile, the RFID, computer communications, electronic communications, and if we looked at it today, it would include things like AI. But these are the first 3 years of the proceedings, and really all I would say is we have morphed in intensity and breadth. These are still the same terms. If we had written proceedings or transcripts from this year's presentations, we would be coming back to this sort of list of 3 tiers, but with additional criteria for each of the tiers and with greater complexity. I think what has happened is that our systems have become more enmeshed. There is greater interdependency in systems. We are aware of these interdependencies, but there is a growing black box occurring here of complexity. We are also seeking adaptation, and we are seeking the impossible, the auditability of the end-to-end systems that we see in action today and emerging.